Getting accepted by a prestigious university is not an easy task anywhere in the world, but Korea is especially infamous for its harsh college entrance process, which is often dubbed as exam hell. It has been the case for the past 70 years, but the recent difference is that students now have more diversified routes to get into university. The classic method was to rank based on their Korean SAT score. The higher your score, the more prestigious university you entered. But now there is a new process where, on top of SAT scores, other qualifications such as students' extracurricular activities, list of awards, or contribution to academic papers or theses are taken into consideration. Also, you can apply for multiple rounds of admissions. Some say this qualitative system is better than the previous one, depending solely on one's SAT score. Their rationale is whether or not a student is well-rounded is not properly measured by the test score only. But this system raises questions about fairness. Well-rounded approach is not quantitative, and there are possibilities for fraud or favoritism. Theoretically, it would be ideal for a student's qualification to be measured by his or her versatility and well-roundedness. But in the Korean society, where nepotism is still rampant, the objectivity of this qualitative measurement system is frequently in question. We all know that the SAT score is not everything, but do we have to fall back on it to make college entrance a fair and reliable process? The Korean SAT score does not fully reflect the full potential of the student. Having a well-rounded background is better than judging someone's skills to memorize. So I said the Korean SAT score does not fully reflect the full potential. So if something reflects something, it's like looking into a mirror, and it means it's matching. So let's say you're a straight A student, you're excellent at school, you've gone to every class, but then you have a really bad day, you might be sick, and you do poorly on the SAT score. Well, that one score that one day does not reflect your potential or how smart you are. You might have just had a bad day. Same goes in the office. If you're working and then you mess up one time, but you're excellent the rest of the time, that one time does not reflect or show your true personality. You just made a mistake, or you weren't on your game that day. And then I said, having a well-rounded background is better than judging someone's skills to memorize. So when we talk about the entrance exam in America, the use of the word well-rounded is used all the time. College wants a well-rounded student. So what that means is that, you can do well on your SATs, but so can everyone else. So what this means is that you have to do other things. So you have to be good at art. You have to be good at sports. You have to be good at computer programming. You have to volunteer. There's so many different factors, but it also works, again, if let's say your SAT scores aren't that good. Personally, mine were not that good. However, my grades were good, and I played sports, and I volunteered, and I did a lot of after-school activities. So that opened the doors to more universities. And now, even today, you could be a bad student and have a bad SAT score, but if you create your own business in high school and it's successful, you're considered kind of well-rounded. So in colleges, they look at all the different factors. They'll even look at, if your parents are poor, but you succeeded in some areas rather than others. So it's very qualitative in the United States, but we call it well-rounded. Standardized tests are an old-fashioned way of ranking the abilities of young students. Other factors need to be incorporated in order to evaluate students. So I said other factors need to be incorporated. So to incorporate is to include. So in evaluating students, not only SATs, you need to incorporate sports, clubs, grades, and so on. Having a broader range of experiences as a student will help them grow as adults. Forcing them to only study for one exam will pigeonhole them in the future. So first I said having a broader range of experiences. So again, you do the SAT, but you can do some sports. You can be in the chess club, computer club. You can volunteer for poor people, old people. There's a lot of things you can do. So you have a broader range. But I said if you only study for one thing, this will pigeonhole you in the future. So to be pigeonholed means, you kind of have only one skill or one ability and you can't do anything else. So if you work at a company and your boss says, you only should do accounting and you keep doing accounting, but you want to do some marketing or you want to do some finance, you can't really get out of that. So you're kind of stuck with only one skill. So you're pigeonholed. So if you're only stuck memorizing, in your 4 years of high school, you're developing as a person, as an adult, you want to be able to have other skills. But if your only skill is to memorize for one test, once you get to college, your growth is kind of stunted and you're not kind of a person with a lot of experience. You only have one. So you're quite pigeonholed in your skills for those years. After-school programs and activities give students a chance to expand their life experience. This system allows them to follow their passion and find new avenues of interest. So in that last one, I said, find their passion and new avenues of interest. So, if you're only studying for one thing and you're interested in teaching language, but you can't, if you want to study and you have to study, that's fine. But if you want to volunteer and teach poor kids, Korean or English, another language, that's another avenue of interest. Or if you're interested in golf and you want to practice golf, that's another avenue. So we talk about roads and streets, but when we talk about an avenue of interest, that's a direction your interest goes into. Looking at all aspects of a student's background sounds great in theory, but it leaves room for a lot of people to inflate their experience when applying for college. So I said, looking at all aspects of a student's background sounds great in theory. We say this expression a lot. So if something sounds great in theory means, in a perfect world, it would work. One of my favorite lines from Homer Simpson is, communism sounds great in theory. So if we think of something that's ideal or a great system, we would say, it sounds great in theory, but in reality, it does not work or cannot work. So we usually say if something sounds great in theory, but in this case, it leaves room for a lot of people to inflate their experience when applying for a college. So to inflate your experience, inflate your resume means to lie or to exaggerate your experience. So let's say you are in a club. Let's say you're in some sort of Habitat for Humanity. You're building buildings for poor people. And then you say you're you're the treasurer of the club. But when applying for college, you might say, I was the vice president of the club. I was second in charge, or I was president of the club. That means you are inflating your experience. You're kind of telling a lie. Allowing more diversified students into college is great, but the appraisal system leaves room for fabricating credentials. So to the first part, allowing more diversified students into college. So a lot of Koreans say university. So university is, it's UK English, it's British English. For example, I went to the American university. It is a university, but when I talk, I say, I went to college. Where did you go? I went to American. Or when I was in college. So college just means a 4-year program, undergraduate program. A university has the master's program or graduate school. So for example, one of the best colleges in America is called Boston College. If you go there, you're very smart. But it is not a university because it does not have a graduate school. So when speaking with Americans, when we talk about our experience, we say, I was in college. Where did you go to college? We usually don't say the word university. And then finally, I said the appraisal system or the qualitative system leaves room for fabricating credentials. Fabricating means to lie or to change something in an incorrect way where it's not true. And credentials are your, I guess Koreans would say, your spec, your resume, your experiences. Your credentials would be your SAT scores, your grades, your licenses, your papers, your recommendation. So if you're fabricating your credentials, you're lying about those things. In order to participate in extracurricular activities and out-of-school programs, you need time and money. These activities are only available to those with vast resources. So we've been talking a lot about in this podcast about extracurricular activities. So that's everything outside of grades and SAT score, essay recommendation. So that includes sports, clubs, volunteer work, if you created a business, if you've done something outside of school that you want to talk about that's an extracurricular activity. And then I said, they're only available to those with vast resources. Vast means a lot of or many. So if you have a lot of money, time, connections, that's a vast resource. Or for example, like the Middle East has a vast resources of oil, a lot of something. Unfortunately, those without money cannot compete against the rich when it comes to extracurricular activities. The richer a child is, the more access he or she will have to a larger range of opportunities poor people cannot attain. So just in that last part, that poor people cannot attain, if you can't attain something, you can't reach it or you can't get it. So if you want something that's $100, but you only have 80, you can't attain that product. Or if you really want to run a marathon, but you can't attain it by 2 kilometers, you can't attain the final goal. All right, thanks, guys. I just have some announcements here. Last week, I was invited to a study group of fans of the show, and we went over one of our previous podcasts, and I met about 12 of you guys. So thanks for downloading. Thanks for listening. And I want to thank Christina for setting it up. Also, my new podcast, Guerrilla English, that's GEURRILLA English, or you can just type it in Hangul, is on YouTube. And I also have a new podcast if you're studying for OPIC. So I put it up on YouTube. It'll be up on Podbang shortly. It's called OPIC Secret or OPIC BMIL. So you can check that out. And then I also have my website up. It's Pangea Korea. That's PANGEA.com. And then the Konglish Killer is still out on all the major ebook retailers. And you can also follow me at MATTSSAM on Instagram. Thanks for downloading, guys. Bye-bye.